Okay, so now we're going to be looking at the table and looking at the characteristics given a table. So it says the table pictured below is a table of values representing an exponential function. And use the table of values to answer the following questions. So let's take a look at A. It says, what is the equation of the horizontal asymptote of the function? Okay, so remember this is exponential. You should be able to answer this. Hopefully you can look at the table and identify that the table values are getting closer to -3. And if you look at the reasoning behind that, as x approaches -infinity, the y values are approaching -3. B, is the graph of f of x above or below the horizontal asymptote? When the inverse function is graphed, will the graph be to the left or to the right of the vertical asymptote? And then explain your reasoning. Okay, so we're going to look at the y values. We already know that the horizontal asymptote is at -3, but all of these other y values are above. Okay, so that means this is going to be above the horizontal asymptote. So the domain, if we look at that, would be -3, not the domain, I'm sorry, but you have your horizontal asymptote and it's going to look like this. So when you do the inverse of that, you're going to have a vertical asymptote at -3. And then since your domain ends up becoming your range, which would be all real numbers, your range, which in this case is from -3 to infinity, that's the range, that is going to be your domain on your logarithm. So -3 is going to be your vertical asymptote, and your domain is going to be from -3 to infinity, so it's going to be on the right side. Okay. So the graph of f of x is above its horizontal asymptote because all the values of f of x, which is y, are greater than -3. The graph of the inverse will be to the right of its vertical asymptote because all the values of x greater than -3 are in f inverse. Okay. So let's take a look at C. What is the equation of the vertical asymptote of the inverse? And explain your reasoning. Okay. X equals -3 is the vertical asymptote of the inverse because y equals -3 is the horizontal asymptote of f of x. D, identify the domain and range of the function and its inverse. Okay, so we have from the original function, which was exponential, the domain is all real numbers, and the range was -3 to infinity. So on the inverse, they're going to be switched. On E, find the equation of the inverse and show your work. Okay, so again, we are going to be writing the equation down and switching the x and the y. Now we're going to add 3. And then now we are going to, whatever your technique is, whether you write the definition, I prefer to write the definition. So I'm going to go ln. I don't need this base. It's already right there implied with ln to the power of x plus 3, that's my argument, is equal to, and then my exponent, which is y minus 2. Or you can take the ln of both sides by going ln and then ln, which means the ln and the e cancel, and you're left with the exact same thing. Add 2, and then don't forget to replace y with f inverse. Okay, so that's my equation. On the grid to the right, sketch the graph of the inverse. Okay, so we already know this information. We know that the horizontal asymptote is, the vertical asymptote is at x equals -3. And all we needed to do was switch these points and then graph them on here. So you're just switching all of those points on the table and graphing them on here. All right, let's try it again. Says the table picture below represents an exponential function. Use the table to answer the question. See if you can do A, B, C, and D. All right, on A, what is the equation of the horizontal asymptote, and explain how you know. Okay, so let's take a look and see what number things are approaching. Notice that we are approaching +3. Is it going to be above or below the horizontal asymptote? Look at all your y values. Your y values start 3 and then they go all the way down. So the graph of the function is below the horizontal asymptote because all of the values of this function are less than 3. The graph of the inverse will lie to the left of its vertical asymptote because all the values of x less than 3 are in F inverse. Remember, so if this is y values are less than 3, when you switch the x and the x values become less than 3. All right. So on C, what is the equation of the vertical asymptote? We've got x equals 3 is the vertical asymptote because y equals 3 is the horizontal asymptote. Identify the domain and range of both. So hopefully we should be good with that, the domain and the range, and then you're switching them for the inverse. On E, let's find the equation. Again, you are switching the x and the y. We're going to subtract 3. That means we're also going to multiply by a negative. Okay, and then now we're going to raise it to log base 2, or the definition. I like doing the definition. Definition says, write the word log. This is your base. This is going to be your argument, and it's going to equal your exponent. Okay, either way, you end up getting at the same spot. Subtract 2 and replace y with F inverse. Now we're going to graph. Okay, so we're going to take those characteristics. We said that the vertical asymptote was 3 and we are going to be to the left. Again, we have all of these points right here. All we need to do is switch the x and the y. And then we're going to plot those points.